At first, Mountain Monsters was more than just a show. It was a promise to keep alive the old stories of the Appalachian Mountains, the tales passed down through generations about creatures that lurked in the shadows. Buck Jacob Lowe, who started as the rookie of the team, grew into one of its most important voices. Fans watched him learn, stumble, and finally step into a role of leadership, even when he never wanted to replace the one man who could never be replaced, John Trapper Tice. But when Buck finally spoke out, what he revealed about why Mountain Monsters ended shocked fans who had followed the team for nearly a decade. It wasn't just the loss of Trapper, and it wasn't just exhaustion. It was the battle between keeping the heart of the show real and giving in to the demands of television executives who wanted something entirely different. March 13, 2022 was supposed to feel like a victory. Season 8 ended with the AIMS team capturing what many called their strongest evidence of Bigfoot yet. The episode showed Buck, Huckleberry, Wild Bill, Jeff, and Willie celebrating as they reviewed footage of a massive figure moving through the Tygard Valley. The smiles looked genuine, and the sense of triumph seemed real. But fans noticed something off, especially with Buck. His eyes didn't carry the same spark, and his excitement felt muted. Viewers flooded social media with questions about whether the team was okay. The episode ended with a cliffhanger, teasing future adventures, and the Travel Channel had already invested in new seasons. But behind those final smiles was exhaustion and heartbreak that no amount of editing could hide. The passing of Trapper in December 2019 had changed everything. Trapper was more than the leader, he was the anchor, the moral compass, and the reason the show had its soul. He taught the team discipline from his military years but also respect for Appalachian traditions. He insisted they never exploit the people who shared their stories. When Trapper's health began failing in Season 6, fans saw glimpses of him at home, but what they didn't see was how heavy those visits were for the team. Buck remembered sitting in Trapper's living room, knowing they were saying goodbye to more than just a friend. They were losing the man who had built the foundation of Mountain Monsters. Without him, the team tried to carry on, dedicating seasons to his memory, but the balance was broken. Still, they pressed on. Fans loved the show because it felt authentic, unlike other paranormal programs full of staged jump scares and fake drama. Mountain Monsters focused on real witnesses, real folklore, and real locations. That authenticity made people trust them. But with Trapper gone, the network saw an opening to push the show in a new direction. Executives wanted bigger monsters, scripted encounters, and higher drama. Buck noticed changes in how episodes were edited, sound effects added to ordinary moments, music layered over silence to create fake tension, and storylines cut to highlight drama instead of culture. The heart of Mountain Monsters, the part that honored Appalachian tradition, was fading. By the time Season 8 was filmed, the work itself had become nearly unbearable. The crew endured long days, often 18 hours, hauling cameras, lighting, and sound gear into dangerous and remote Appalachian terrain. What fans saw as raw and natural was often the result of carefully orchestrated production. Buck, once the eager rookie who ran headfirst into swamps and caves, was now worn down physically and emotionally. The dangerous stunts, the endless travel, and the strain of living two lives, one for the cameras and one behind them, were piling up. And worse, Buck realized his own voice was being altered. Narrations were edited to suggest events that didn't happen, moments were cut to change context, and what had once been true investigation was turning into manufactured reality. Conversations within the team grew tense. Buck, Huckleberry, and Wild Bill often spoke about their worries, questioning whether they were still honoring Trapper's vision. The family-like bond that once held them together was starting to crack. Longtime production staff who understood the team's mission were replaced by newcomers focused only on ratings. The wilderness hunts now felt less like exploration and more like staged theater. The breaking point came during filming in Tygard Valley. Surrounded by floodlights, multiple cameras, and special effects equipment, Buck looked around and realized they weren't documenting real mysteries anymore, they were manufacturing them. The final straw came not in the woods, but in a conference room. After Discovery Communications took over Travel Channel, new executives presented Buck with their vision for Season 9. They wanted the AIMS team chasing monsters that looked like they belonged in movies, not folklore. They planned to hire actors to play witnesses, build artificial sets to replace real Appalachian locations, and even introduce computer-generated creatures. What they offered was not an evolution but a complete transformation. Mountain Monsters would become an action series with the AIMS team as performers rather than investigators. The financial rewards were tempting. If Buck agreed, the show could go on for years, and he and his teammates would be set for life. But the cost was too high. Trapper had always taught them that their mission was bigger than entertainment. It was about respecting communities and preserving folklore. Turning it into scripted drama would betray everything Trapper stood for. Buck sat through the meeting, listening to executives talk about demographics and content optimization as if they were selling products, not protecting centuries of Appalachian tradition. He knew his answer before the meeting ended. No amount of money could buy back integrity once it was lost. When Buck shared the network's demands with Huckleberry, Wild Bill, Jeff, and Willie, they all agreed. They were tired, they were grieving, and they were unwilling to become caricatures of themselves. Together, they decided Mountain Monsters had to end. The public was told the team had completed their mission, but privately the truth was that they refused to betray Trapper's legacy. By September 2024, the calls from the network had stopped. The official announcement was made: Mountain Monsters would not return for a 9th season. Fans were heartbroken, confused, and desperate for answers. 4 months, Buck stayed silent, bound by contracts and his own grief. But eventually, he knew he owed the truth to the people who had supported them from the beginning. It wasn't just about monsters or folklore, it was about integrity, respect, and holding on to something real in a world that constantly tried to turn truth into entertainment. When Buck finally spoke, he revealed the exhaustion, the pressure, the heartbreak, and the impossible choice they were forced to make. It wasn't fame that broke Mountain Monsters. It was the weight of staying true to their mission in an industry that cared more about ratings than respect. In the end, Buck and his teammates chose integrity over money, authenticity over spectacle, and loyalty to Trapper over everything else. And while Mountain Monsters may never return to television, its legend lives on in the mountains, in the stories of Appalachia, and in the hearts of fans who understand why Buck's story matters. They had seen what happened when other paranormal shows chose ratings over truth. The quality of those shows dropped, and the people behind them lost their integrity. The Mountain Monsters team agreed that continuing under the network's new direction would go against everything Trapper stood for and would betray the Appalachian communities who had trusted them. They chose to end the show while it was still respected instead of watching it turn into something fake. For Buck Jacob Lowe, the choice was not only about honoring Trapper but also about his personal life. Traveling non-stop, working in dangerous places, and dealing with the emotional pressure of leading investigations had worn him down. His wife, Christine, had stood by him through 8 seasons, but the strain was affecting their whole family. At first, the show involved simple trips into familiar areas, but over the years, it grew into exhausting expeditions with long travel, heavy equipment, and large production crews. Buck was nearing his 30s, and the toll from years of wilderness adventures could no longer be ignored. More than anything, Buck began questioning if the show was still true to its original purpose. Mountain Monsters started as a way to explore Appalachian folklore and culture, but over time it was turning into just another piece of generic entertainment. The dramatic cliffhanger at the end of Season 8 wasn't meant to end the series, it was supposed to lead into Season 9. But when Buck and the team realized they couldn't keep going without betraying their values, that unfinished ending became their goodbye to the fans. 3 months before he died, Trapper invited Buck to his home. They sat on the porch where so many AIMS strategies had been made. For the first time, Trapper opened up about worries he had kept to himself. He had seen the television industry change and knew that shows that became successful often faced pressure to evolve, even if it meant losing their heart. His military background had taught him how missions could drift off course, and he saw signs that Mountain Monsters was heading that way. Trapper loved Appalachian culture and worried that the show might eventually exploit the very communities they wanted to honor. He had always insisted on treating people with respect, paying them fairly, and making sure their stories were told truthfully. But he feared that money and ratings would override those values. He warned Buck about the temptation to fake drama when real investigations didn't bring exciting results. He knew that was the path other shows had taken, and it always ended with losing the audience's trust. That day, Trapper made Buck promise never to let mountain monsters turn into something that used people or mocked Appalachian traditions. The promise stayed with Buck, especially after Trapper's death, when the network began pushing harder for more manufactured drama. Trapper had also revealed something else that day, something he had never shared on camera. During their investigations, the team had encountered strange things they couldn't explain or even safely document. Those moments reminded him that some mysteries were meant to remain mysteries. Their job was to explore, not exploit. As time passed, Buck saw how right Trapper had been. Network executives didn't care about uncertainty or respect. They wanted shocking evidence, staged encounters, and bigger stories that guaranteed ratings. But the true power of Mountain Monsters had always been in its honesty, its willingness to admit that not everything could be explained. For Buck, honoring Trapper wasn't just about dedicating episodes to him or visiting his grave. It meant protecting the values he had set from the beginning: respect, authenticity, and an understanding that stories were worth more than ratings. The choice to end the show became unavoidable. Continuing would have meant breaking the promise Buck made to Trapper. The financial loss was huge, but the moral cost of staying would have been far greater. The network presented them with an ultimatum: accept the new scripted format or face cancellation. The changes they demanded for Season 9 would have destroyed everything the team stood for. Real witnesses would be replaced by actors, real locations by sets, and genuine investigations by scripted outcomes. Buck had already seen this happen to other paranormal shows. Authenticity gave way to fake storylines, and soon the original heart was gone. But the network didn't understand why Mountain Monsters had become loved in the first place. It wasn't about jump scares or staged drama, it was about the real people of Appalachia and the respect shown to their folklore. Accepting the network's terms would betray Trapper, betray their fans, and betray the communities who had trusted them. The cliffhanger ending of Season 8 suddenly made sense. It wasn't planned to leave fans hanging, it happened because the team realized they couldn't go on under the new rules. What was supposed to set up Season 9 ended up being the final chapter. After the cancellation, the team disappeared from television for almost 3 years. Fans wondered if they would ever return. Buck, Huckleberry, and Wild Bill seemed to vanish completely, leaving behind 8 seasons filled with mysteries that felt real. But they weren't gone. Behind the scenes, they were planning something new. In June 2025, they launched Sons of Appalachia on YouTube. This time, they had full creative control. No executives, no scripts, no pressure to fake evidence, just genuine investigations and honest storytelling. The new project allowed them to return to what had made Mountain Monsters special in the first place. They could spend time getting to know witnesses, explore folklore deeply, and share their findings without editing tricks or manufactured drama. The production might not have the big budget of a television network, but it had something more valuable: authenticity. Buck explained that Sons of Appalachia was everything they had always wanted Mountain Monsters to be. They could say no to anything that clashed with their principles, and they could finally share stories about Trapper freely, without contracts holding them back. Revealing the truth about Mountain Monsters served many purposes. It gave fans the closure they deserved. It showed that Sons of Appalachia would follow a clear code of honesty. And it highlighted a bigger issue within the paranormal TV world: too many shows sacrifice truth for profit. Buck's choice to walk away from money and fame in order to keep his integrity sent a powerful message. Independent platforms like YouTube offered something networks couldn't: a direct relationship with the audience. That freedom meant more honest storytelling and stronger connections with the people watching. For the AIMS team, it wasn't just a career change, it was a return to their roots. Their work was once again guided by the same values they had started with: respect for communities, truth over drama, and love for Appalachian mysteries. Buck's final message to fans was clear. Mountain Monsters might have ended, but the journey wasn't over. The hunt would continue, but this time on their own terms, always guided by Trapper's wisdom. The spirit of what they built together would live on in every story they told and every mystery they chased. The truth was simple: Mountain Monsters didn't end because they ran out of creatures to track. It ended because the team refused to trade authenticity for ratings. They chose integrity over profit, respect over exploitation, and truth over spectacle. And in doing so, they ensured that Trapper's legacy, and the heart of Appalachia's stories, would never be lost.